We've got some pretty interesting news to take a look at here today involving two New York Rangers players who, of course, have had their name involved in a lot of trade talks recently, as Brennan Othmann and Artemi Panarin both seem to be players that might potentially be on the move at some point throughout this regular season. The Rangers, of course, have started to see one of their prospects in Brennan Othmann have their name involved in some trade rumors, as it does appear that maybe some other teams, after seeing him get sent down to the AHL, are maybe starting to gain some interest on possibly trading for this current prospect. And also, we've got some more news and kind of updates here involving the trade and extension kind of talk involving Artemi Panarin, as he, of course, is entering the final season of his massive 7-year contract that carries a cap hit at about $11.642 million per season. And with it being the last year of his contract, he will become a free agent next summer, and if he does become one, he could, of course, end up leaving for absolutely nothing if he does not either A, get traded away, or B, sign an extension. So the Rangers are definitely going to have a big decision to make there with Panarin, but we're going to start off today's video with the Brennan Othmann news. So recently, there was some reports coming out talking about how there has been some apparent interest gaining around a prospect by the name of Brennan Othmann, of course, who is currently playing in the AHL for the Rangers, a former first-round pick, of course, was a pretty highly touted prospect. Things haven't quite gone as planned. He's had a couple, solid pro seasons now, but hasn't quite really been able to, crack that full-time NHL role. And it does seem at this point there, with other solid wing prospects, being down there in Hartford, and guys like, Gabe Perreault and Brett Berard who are down there with him, those prospects seem to potentially be above him in the pecking order for a coach like Mike Sullivan, as, of course, Othmann was sent down in training camp a decent amount of time before those two prospects. It seems like he may favor those guys over Othmann, and if that's the case, but there already being a lot of competition in that bottom six, and of course, especially once a guy like Trocheck comes back there, that top six is going to be pretty much clogged up. So there's not really a clear path for Othmann to kind of joining this Rangers team, so it definitely seems like a trade could make a bit of sense for both sides here, Othmann and the Rangers, as he might want to go to a team that he may have a bit more of an opportunity with at the NHL level, and the Rangers might want to try and get back a decent piece possibly before his value falls off even more. But of course, either way, I think it does make sense there. The Rangers holding on to him, if there's not the right package out there or the deal, then, obviously maybe hold on to him, and he still definitely could become, a really solid player one day. I'm a massive fan of Othmann. Of course, I got to watch him in person in the building win the OHL championship in Game 6. I was in person there. It was an awesome game to watch. But of course, at the end of the day, I want to see this Rangers team have a lot of success and be in the best spot possible going forward. So if they think trading him away and getting back a certain prospect in a kind of swap deal or getting back a pick is what's best, then I can understand that. Next up here, we've got a quote from Frank Seravalli, and a couple of these quotes were taken by NHL Rumor Report and posted on X. But Frank ended up going on to say about Othmann, they have received some calls on Othmann, not someone they are really considering or trying to move. They're not going to give him away for nothing. They're looking for something pretty significant in return. And the other day, I did make a video kind of talking about, the Othmann kind of, trade rumors and all that stuff. But also, I talked about a few prospects that I think could make a bit of sense in a potential prospect kind of swap deal. And I think some of those guys may really be enticing if they were actually potentially available. And if you do want to check out that video, talking about some actual prospects that may potentially be able to be traded for in a swap deal, I'll have that linked at the end of this one. But point being, I think if, they are offered a really solid prospect in return there, and it makes sense, maybe it's a really talented kind of left-handed defenseman or, really solid kind of center prospect, whatever it is, maybe it would make sense there. But at the end of the day, you definitely are not looking to trade away a guy like Othmann, in my opinion, for like a, just like third or fourth round pick. To me, that's not worth it. And next up here, we're going to move on to the Artemi Panarin side of things here. And first off, we've got a post on X here from Johnny Lazarus, who was talking with Elliot Friedman, and he went on to say, spoke to Friedman this morning about New York Rangers Artemi Panarin after discussing the idea of a short-term, less money kind of deal. And Elliot went on to say, quote, if he's going to stay in New York at what he wants, he's going to have the kind of year that makes them say, we got to do this. And that's where I kind of wonder, if he does have that absolutely incredible year where he's, back over 100 points, he's got like 110 points there, he's got like 45, closing on like 50 goals there potentially. He ends up having some monster kind of season, let's say, or at least like 100 points there. There could definitely be a team that, let's say the Rangers don't have him extended by that point there, and we're heading into the summer and, we're starting to hear these rumblings. I wouldn't be surprised if a team was willing to go out there and pay him like 14 mil per season for like a 3-year deal possibly if he does get above that 100-point mark or, has a monster season. So that's where I do get a little worried about this Rangers team waiting too long to kind of see whether or not he does have that monster year, because if he just wants to leverage his potentially great season that he maybe does have into a bigger deal, he definitely could, because the way the market's going right now and with the way teams, probably were hoping to be able to potentially spend, some big money on a guy like McDavid or Kaprizov or Eichel or Kyle Connor or whoever it is, and go out there and try and overpay for one of these star players, or maybe even a Martin Necas, who at this point, I would imagine is probably going to end up signing back with the Avalanche there. You've got a guy like Alex Tuch who may end up re-signing with the Buffalo Sabres. Maybe a Nick Schmaltz stays with the Utah Mammoth there. Some of these top guys that are still left available that I still think are good players, but if they also, some of them start to sign back with their current teams, which is very possible, this free agent class could go from looking absolutely insanely good to quite terrible in the matter of moments. So that's where a guy like Panarin, if he's, the only kind of like 90 or 80 plus point player that's actually in free agency, the only kind of real, high level kind of elite player, and some of these teams having a lot of money kind of burning a hole in their pocket, they might go out there and spend pretty big on a guy like this and kind of massively overpay. And that would not be shocking to me in the slightest with the way things have kind of gone so far. So that's where I really think you either got to figure things out pretty quickly, and it doesn't have to happen in the next couple weeks here, but you have to have an idea soon, at some point in the near future, about what you really want to do here. Do you want to go out there and bring him back? Do you want to see and kind of wait things out? And if you do, you might be in a spot where you can't trade him away, you don't get him re-signed, and he's in a spot to leverage a potentially phenomenal season into a humongous contract, as there are going to be a lot of teams looking to spend a lot of money this offseason, and if there are not a bunch of other star players, they're all going to focus in on a guy like Panarin, and the Rangers are going to be one of many teams going out there in a bidding war. And to me, obviously, Panarin is a phenomenal player. I've talked about it a ton, how this is a guy who, came in, signed in free agency, a while ago now, and 6 of the 7 seasons so far, of course, this is year 7, but the first 6 of them, he has led the team in points each and every single season. This is a very valuable member of this franchise. He is the entire kind of focal point of this offense here. He's the main guy on offense each and every single season, but the problem is, I just think with where he's at right now, with where this team is at, already having gone in such a drastic kind of different kind of direction now, I'm not quite sure I want to see this team go out there and pay a guy like Panarin, 12 and a half, 13 and a half, roaching on maybe 14 even if they have to, $1 million per season on like a 3-year deal. And maybe I'm getting a little carried away here and he isn't going to get near that much money. And it's definitely possible if he doesn't have a monster year, then maybe he doesn't end up signing, for more than he's making right now. Maybe he does sign for less than like 11.642. But the point is, if he does have a big year, which he's starting to kind of click into gear now after having a bit of a slow start due to missing a lot of time in training camp and preseason kind of an injury. If he starts to get clicking here and gets going in prime form, and like I said, gets around like 100 points there possibly, putting up like 40 plus goals or something, he could be in for an absolutely humongous payday, and he might look to go somewhere else if the Rangers aren't willing to pay him what exactly he's looking for. So that's where I think we could be in for a bit of a problem, and that's why, if this team is somehow able to go out there and make some kind of a, Mikko Rantanen trade or a Gabrick trade where you're trading away a very talented player, like a star or superstar caliber guy, whatever, and you're trading him away mid-season there for a bit of a package in return where maybe you're getting a, kind of really nice young kind of middle six forward and a, kind of decent young, left-handed defenseman and a pick or two as well. On top of that, that may end up being a decent package if you can get some, young, promising NHL talent for right now that can help you this moment, and also a pick or two for down the road. That kind of a deal could make a bit of sense there. Some kind of a framework like the Mikko Rantanen deal. Obviously, you're not going to get that same kind of level of package, but maybe you can get some kind of a deal like that. That kind of framework could make a bit of sense there. So I think this team's going to have a big decision to make. I have no idea as of right now what they want to do, but I think this team is going to have to make a decision, sooner rather than later, because if you wait too long, you could be in a spot where you end up seeing him walk for nothing, and this team is left, trying to sign a couple other kind of solid players in free agency to kind of make up for what we lost with Panarin, because we're really starting to see a lot of teams kind of keep their young star players and not have to trade them away and are able to kind of re-sign them and keep them with them. So with that being the case, there's not many kind of young, really talented kind of players that are like, real good top 6 caliber forwards or real good top 4 caliber defensemen that are on the kind of younger side of things, that are in their earlier mid-20s, that are actually available via trade, that are, real good players. There's not many of those guys out there. One of the best names I can think of is like a Jason Robertson. And after that, I can't really think of many young players that are realistically, great players that are actually available for trade. So that's where the Rangers could definitely have a bit of a tough time trying to replace what they lose with Panarin if they aren't able to trade him away and actually get some pretty good stuff back in return. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching today's video. If you have enjoyed, definitely don't forget to click that like and subscribe button for daily New York Rangers content, as I do post a video about the New York Rangers every single day. And also, definitely don't forget to comment down below your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts on the Brennan Othmann kind of trade rumor circling around there? Do you want to see him traded away? What would you want back in return, like a pick or a prospect? And also, what are your thoughts on the Panarin, side of things here with these kind of trade and extension rumors? Do you want to see him re-signed? What kind of a deal do you think is realistic that he might come back on? And also, what kind of a trade package would you want to see come back in return for a guy like Panarin if he was able to be traded away? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'll catch you next one, and let's go Rangers.